Welcome to the CLB Forge podcast. This is the show to help equip you and your church for mission, ministry, and multiplying disciples. Here are your hosts, Pastor Mike Natal and Dr. Ryan Nilsson.
Welcome to episode 31. We're happy to have you guys here.
Yeah, it's great to be with you today. Today we get to talk about a major event in the life of our national church body, the Elevate Youth Convention. And we have as a guest today, Pastor Brandon Pangman. He's the director of the Elevate Youth Convention.
Yeah, let me give you a little bio about Brandon, and then we'll let him kind of take over and share a little bit about what they have exciting things going on for the youth in our denomination and outside of the denomination as well. So today's guest was born in Detroit, Michigan. He was raised in a suburb in Chicago, and he actually came to faith while he was in high school by a gentleman who literally just walked up to him and started to talk to him about Christ. I mean, that's an amazing story, and one that I'm sure has colored who you are as a person, Brandon, and how you share Christ with others as well. He went to Alphabus, which is the Associated Free Lutheran Bible School, and he graduated from the Lutheran Brethren Seminary. He's been working with youth for 20 plus years in some capacity. He volunteered in youth ministry. He was a part-time youth leader, full-time youth ministries, and head dean in Hillcrest. And now, as Ryan alluded to, he is the director of Elevation Youth Convention. And we're gonna talk about that in a little bit with the name change and everything. We're going to give Brandon a little bit of time. He's married to his wife, Jenny, for about 20 years, and they have 3 kids. Here's a little resume from Brandon. As we went through this, I noticed that you haven't pastored at any churches on the East Coast yet. So
if you look in there, I did 3 years at Huntington Station, Long Island, New York.
Oh, there you go.
And I think next to that, in parentheses, what I sent to you was 3 best years of my life.
Oh, wow. 3 best years of his life. So there you go. So employment at Bethel and Huntington Station, at Hillcrest as the head dean, associate pastor at Bethesda Lutheran Brethren Church, lead pastor at Rock of Ages in Seattle, Washington, lead pastor now at Emmaus in DeWitt, Iowa. And he's also a chaplain at the DeWitt Police Department. He does a lot of things to further the kingdom of God. And one of the things, and the main reason why we had him on today, is as the director of Elevate Youth Convention. And so we are excited to welcome Pastor Brandon Pangman to the podcast today. Welcome.
Yeah, it's good to be here with you guys. I'm excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So we like to kind of fire things off. If you've listened to our podcast before, you know that the question is inevitable. Brandon, which one do you prefer? Are you a Star Wars fan or a Star Trek fan?
I'm going to go with Star Wars, even though I don't know anything about either one of them. And I'll give you this. I do think, as I came up in my Christian faith, I noticed that people who watch Star Wars or Star Trek were better storytellers as preachers. So I started to get my kids into that at an early age. Even though I didn't grow up with it, I was like, man, so if you were to ask my kids any question, a couple of my kids, any questions on Star Wars, they will nail it. I encourage it. I just didn't have that upbringing.
Nice. That is a powerful assertion that you have made with either of those. And I think that will definitely preach in more ways than one, for sure. So, Brandon, before we start talking about Elevate, I would love to have our listeners get to know you a little bit better. So, could you share with our listeners events in your life that have kind of had big impacts on your discipleship journey now, and where you find yourself, whether that has ties in with youth or your own personal testimony of Christ? I'd love to give you an opportunity to kind of share a little bit about that for yourself.
Yeah. Well, you guys talked about, we'll talk about the discipleship part first. You know, evangelism and discipleship obviously go hand in hand. And this is what happened for me in my life. I think I was just finished my freshman year, going into my sophomore year of high school. And my sister was going to this church, and doing stuff. And then one day they were going to some music festival. Then some girl backed out like the day before. I'm giving you the faster version of this, but they asked me if I wanted to go. I said no. And then I went inside my house. And I went inside my house to eat because I was high. I just gotten high, and I came home to eat food, and my mom started yelling at me about some stuff. And I remember just walking out the back door, and my sister, her and her friends who I had just rejected, I said to them, "Hey, actually, can I go with you guys to this music festival?" And I just thought I would sit around a campsite and hang out, and that's what I did. And while I was there, this guy walks up to me, tells me about Jesus. And it was the first time that I can remember ever hearing the message of Jesus Christ. And the whole time, me just being like, I want that. I'd lived looking around at all the lies of the world, like just everything that people talked about, the things that people said mattered. And I just remember thinking, I was at a point in my life where just thinking all those things were lies. Never knowing about Jesus, not knowing what he did for me, not knowing that he took my sin away, all those things. I didn't have a clue. I didn't even know the name Jesus. So then I go to this outdoor music event. Some guy walks up to me who I'd never met before, starts talking to me about sports, and then starts talking to me about Jesus. And I remember just sitting there being like, I want that. I want that. I want that forgiveness. Like, I want that. And that's the short version of it. I'd love to tell you more about it sometime. But so then I went home. And as we went home, we dropped off. We stopped in the church parking lot to get everything out of the van. And this guy walks up to us and he goes, "Hi, my name's Pastor Brian. And I'm the new pastor, or I'm the new worker at this church. Or no, and I'm new to this church." That's what he said. Let me get the word right. Because I remember when he said, "I'm Pastor Brian. I'm new to this church." I didn't know what a pastor was. And I thought when he said, "I'm Pastor Brian," I thought, man, that's a funny first name, that his name's Pastor. Like, I had never heard that name before. So, and there was a pastor who went to that church who I'd met before. It just never clicked with me. You know what I mean? Maybe we all just call him by his first name. I have no idea. But then that guy, Brian Pearson, Pastor Brian, he ended up being, and that next year, my dad left our family. My mom went to jail soon after that. And this guy became the guy who took me in and started teaching me God's word and preaching. And I went to church every Sunday. I loved it. I loved the different, for me, it was a different lifestyle. It was eye-opening. It was amazing. So, and that guy, Brian Pearson, he helped me get to Bible school. He helped me pay for stuff. Just an amazing, I went to this guy's house, no joke, probably 6 to 7 days a week. And you're like, well, 6 to 7, maybe 13 out of 14 days in a row, I'd be at this guy's house for hours. That's how much time this guy spent with me. So, and I probably needed every minute of it.
That's a very powerful representation of discipleship in an individual's life.
Oh man,
that was full on living out discipleship.
Yes. I mean, what it really is too, when you talk about Jesus basically lived with the 12 disciples, right? That's how we would look at that. We'd be like, man, they walked with each other, they did life together every single day. Now it's to that same extent, but now you have this kid who, I'm not kidding you, I was not in a gang, but a lot of my friends were. And on top of that, they're doing drugs. And even though when I came to faith, though, I never did drugs again. So like that day that I gave my life, or that Christ took hold of my life, like drugs were never a part of my life again. Wow. But, and then you talk about, he paid for my meals. I ate dinner at his house regularly. His wife always just planned on me being there. And I used to ask him, because he didn't have any kids, like, man, why don't you have any kids? And he goes, man, I got you. And then it wasn't just me. This dude inherited my friends. I would tell people, dude, I got the coolest pastor ever. And then they would start going to my pastor's house, and we would hang out at this guy's house, like me and 3, 4, 5 of my friends all the time. And I think he knew it's either my house where he's safe, or or the streets where he's going to find some trouble. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's tremendous. If I can ask, along with that story, how has that colored not only your current ministry as the lead pastor at Emmaus, but also your drive to reach youth, which is also one of the things that you do as well?
Yeah, and I'm going to answer that, and you might have to even come back at me again with that. But I want to say one more thing.
No problem.
It wasn't just Pastor Brian who discipled me. It was his wife. I think I always say Pastor Brian because like he was the focal point and he was the one I connected a lot with. But his wife, Margaret, was also just as much involved in my life. I mean,
yeah.
So I don't want to sell with her part short because they did it together and it was amazing. So now what was that last question, Mike?
So my question was like, so not only both of them, Brian and Margaret, but also other people who have been influential into your life, how has that colored your way of doing discipleship, not only at your church at Emmaus, but also your drive to essentially like bring people in to do this upcoming convention and conventions prior to this specifically for youth?
Yeah, discipleship is huge. And as even, when you're in seminary, I feel like that was driven home to us. How are we going to disciple people? How are we going to, there's different layers to the church. I don't know what terminology I should be using here, but like I always look at, like, you have your core people in the center, and then you have people who come to church 2 times a month, maybe 3. And then the next one is you have people who are like every other month. And then you have more peripheral people who maybe their kids only come to youth group. And I like to draw arrows inwards on those circles. And it's how do we move people from, I'd call it like a 5 or a 6 where, I don't go to church myself. My kid goes to youth group. How do I move them into, hey, if I can just get them to attend church once a month? And it's not just so that they can attend church. When I say attend church, what I really mean is how can I get them to regularly hear the gospel message, the law gospel message? So we're trying to move people closer into the circles. And one of the things that I've done, and this is what I got from Brian Pearson and Margaret, is this. I have people in my house. I go out to eat with people. I'm spending time with them. And usually I don't have just that family over to my house for dinner. So if I'm having a non-church family over to my house for dinner, I am connecting them with at least 1 or 2 other church families. I don't know if they all pick up on this, but that way now, if they want to come to church and they do come, they have 2 touch points. They have 2 families they're connected with, right? So it's constantly about not just my relationship as the pastor or an individual. It's me trying to get people to move closer to that center, closer to being, core church people who live out the life of Christ and moving them towards that center. But in that, it's getting them to know and meet different people. So you will always see me with people from church, but you will rarely see me with just church people or just, I call it street people I get to know, So it's usually I'm intermingling with them, and we open our door constantly. I mean, I have large gatherings at my house, probably once every 4 to 6 weeks, where there's 20, 30, 40 people at my house, coming over for some type of get together. So
that's great. I love how you're providing that opportunity for people in your church to rub shoulders with people from the community.
And that becomes contagious. You start doing that with people, man, and then they start doing that with their groups of friends. So now it is often that when someone invites me to their house, they have a next door neighbor or another family who aren't connected or associated with my church or any church. And I'm going there and I'm just hanging out with them. And it's really a formula. I mean, it really is. The more people who are connected to your church, who are become friends with like your non-Christian friend, they become a part of that group. They are going to get Christian influence, Christian wisdom from not one person. And then it also becomes, well, Brandon's not the only person who believes in this Jesus story. You know, that guy does too. And so is his wife. And, you know, so it just, that's a big part of it. And I think it all goes back to Brian Pearson and Margaret. And well, it goes back further than that, obviously, with the disciples and Jesus. But in my life, it goes back to, that was my first glimpse of Christianity. One guy told me about Jesus. The next guy raised me in Jesus. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing that with us, Brandon. We'd love to talk to you today about Elevate. Can you tell us, how'd you get involved with Elevate, and what do you do currently with that?
Yeah, so I'm the director of Elevate Youth Convention, and how I got involved in it back in 2007, I think they asked me to be a seminar speaker. And then I think I got asked back in 2009 to be a seminar speaker. And I remember being like, okay, yeah, I'll come back and help in 2009. And so I'm there in 2009. I lead a seminar. And at the end of it, I walked up to Joel Nordfit and said, hey, I feel like I have some gifts administratively, creativity, in the area of creativity, that could be useful to you guys. And I would love to volunteer my time. So that was that's obviously at the beginning of August back then. And so he hit me up and said, hey, we're going to start to plan the next youth convention. This was in probably September, October of 2009. So we just wrapped up the youth convention and we're still getting ready to start. And I was at my first church. I was at Bethesda Lutheran Brethren Church in Wisconsin, Eau Claire, Wisconsin. And so Joe Nerf asked me to be on the committee, and I'm like, yeah. And then we had one meeting in Minneapolis, and I just came prepared, man. Like, I was so excited about being a part of youth convention and like being a part of the team. And and he had just said, hey, everyone, at this time when we had convention, it was 3 days. It was 6 sessions. So you had a half day, 2 full days, and then a half day. And he's like, bring a theme idea, bring 6 sessions, like, you know, try to bring something, but it doesn't need to be complete because we'll just all add to it, you know? And so he says this, and I show up on day 1 and I had a theme Bible verse. I had all 6 sessions outlined, and I was so excited. And then we left there. It was really funny because we got there, and because I came just so excited, they actually said, do you want to be one of the main speakers? And I'm like, oh no, I'm not quite ready for that. You know, like and I mean this, I was still so excited about being a part of the planning. And I knew that God was going to, I'm creative. I like creative stuff. And so I knew I was going to bring a different flavor from just being on a part of the team, that I said no to being a main speaker and just still being a part of the team. And then, no joke, I don't know how much time, maybe it was like a week later, 2 weeks later, Joel Norfolk called me up and said to me, we would like for you to be the director of at that time, youth convention. And when he said it to me, I misheard him. I said, oh, I'll help you find someone. And he's like, no, we want you to lead it. And this is, you would have thought I was coming out of puberty, no joke, because I still remember it. I went, who, me? Like, I meant to say, who, me? And it came out like in this highest voice, and it cracked. And I was like, me? And he's like, yeah. And I said, Joe, I don't have 15 hours a week to give this. And he said, no, it's between 15 and 25 hours a month. And I said, oh, I can do that.
Nice.
You know, like, and And that was in 2010 when I think I officially started being a part of it. But at that time, youth convention, we were kind of not doing well. I think we were under 200 kids. And the very first meeting Joel had me go to was a meeting with youth workers from other parts of the synod, East Coast, West Coast, all over. Camp directors were there from IP, and the first thing that we talked about was, are we going to just cancel youth convention? And I remember being like, wait a second, you just hired me a month ago and we're going to cancel this thing? and thankfully out of that meeting was a lot of support from the synod, from people around the synod, that they wanted to keep doing it. And so that's all we did. We kept on going. And that's a big part of how I started doing Elevate, or I call it Elevate now. I'm getting used to it, but youth convention and
yeah. So if I can ask you, Brandon, I'm sure that our listeners, maybe they've missed this, but we've heard you kind of allude to this. So for those of you who are familiar with the Lutheran Brethren, you know that every other year there tends to be a large youth event that meets at Estes Park in Colorado, and it's called Youth Convention. So if you've heard of Youth Convention, Brandon is the director of that. They have now rebranded themselves within the last, what do you say, 4 months, 5 months?
This year. Yep. This year.
Yeah. To now being called Elevate. And so, Brandon, if you could let us peek behind the veil and just kind of tell us a little bit of why that occurred, why the rebranding.
Yeah. So it's because listen, I'm going to go back one step, and you'll edit, you'll cut me out, you'll do what you guys want, because you have a pastor on here who likes to talk. And so since Mike's pointing to himself right now, so Mike does too, I like it. But since I've been doing youth convention, I've had something called the 3 C's that I kind of look at, and it's Christ is 1 C, challenge is another C, and then change is a 3rd C. So you said something, Mike, about it's in Estes Park, Colorado, and it is in Estes Park, Colorado, and we keep going back there, and it's for a couple of reasons. So we made a change to not move every other convention, and we made that change for cost's sake, because youth convention was going through and spending tons of money, but it would cost anywhere from $20,000 to $40,000 to go out and do site development and go look at Florida and New Orleans and Seattle and all these places. And we said, well, why don't we just keep doing it at the same place so that we can take that 20 to 40 grand and lower the cost of camp. So that was one of our changes. We thought, you know what, let's not spend that money. We can get in here and do stuff. But then the change to the name Elevate Youth Convention happened because every 2 years we're changing our Facebook name, we're changing our website name, and a lot of people would be like, what's YC, Youth Convention? Well, that didn't tell them very much. So Elevate Youth Convention is a ministry of the Church of the Lutheran Brethren. The synod supports it, guides us, gives us direction when we ask them for it. And we made that change so that every 2 years we weren't changing logos and brands. And now people can go back to the same webpage, because it would always change. You know, it'd be yc13.org, yc15.org, yc17.org. And then you have to have people who can do that. So we were changing everything all the time. So now we just have the same name, and all we got to do is change out speakers, change out the things that are, the theme's going to change, you know. There's lots of changes that happen each time. But with that was why we changed the name. I mean, there's a couple other reasons too, but for the sake of not going on too long, it was more for branding and for people to be able to find us when they were searching for questions instead of always changing.
Yeah, that makes sense. You know, giving some people some consistency, some continuity with it, so that they can consistently search for it and find it is really important. So share with us a little bit of like what happens at convention, at Elevate.
Yeah. So, well, I told you the 3 C's part, and I'm going to talk about that again because inside the 3 C's is Christ, challenge, and change. Well, one of the changes we made was that every year when we were done, we used to do this. We used to do evaluation sheets. And, my first year when we closed up, I think the year before I started, we had around 200 kids. The number 191 stands out. So I think that's what it was, but I'm not positive. And then we went up into, I believe it was the 300s, and then the 400s, and then we got in the 500s. And you have all these sheets that kids fill out at the end of each camp, and they would tell you what they liked about camp, what they didn't like about camp, and all these different things. And so you have all this feedback coming back. And one of the things that came back was add another day, add another day, add another day. And so we added, that was one of our changes we made for youth conventions. We added another day. We went from 2 full days to 3 full days plus half days on the sides. So kids show up at camp and they show up on the first day. It's a half day. And from the second they get there until they leave, our goal is to point them to Jesus Christ, whether it's the people greeting them, whether it's at the registration desk, whether it's as they walk into the sessions with people high-fiving them, talking to them. Our MCs know that they're there to be fun and to interact with kids. But if you're only interacting and you're not showing Christ in certain ways, we kind of missed it. So every aspect of what we're doing is pointing students to Jesus Christ. What else can I answer about that part?
Yeah, I was going to ask if you have any like spoiler alerts that you could share with us about speakers, guests, music, anything like that.
Yeah, well, I believe our posters are out in most of our churches, and hopefully they're on the doors and not in garbage cans and things like that. But one of the things that another one of our changes for this convention was that we switched from 2 main speakers to 8 main speakers. And so I feel like maybe that's not a spoiler, but that's a big change. And the reason for it is that we realize that as we've grown, we have kids who come from Florida. You get some from Long Island, different parts of the East Coast. We get them from Canada, California, Washington. You have Midwest kids. We have kids from Texas. I mean, we've taken all these different kids, and we've had 2 speakers, and they each do 4 sessions. Well, one of the things I'm excited about this year is that we switched to 1 main speaker for each session. And that's kind of a big deal because the amount of energy it takes to make 4 messages that have an expectation of being great for each session is kind of high. So this time we thought, you know what, we're going to try, and we're going to use 8 different voices, and we're going to hope and pray that these 8 different voices can speak to different students, So I know we have a couple speakers from the East Coast. We have a couple from the Midwest. I mean, we try to cover each region somewhat, It doesn't always work out that way, but I'm excited about just hearing. I'm excited. And that's one of the things we did was, hey, let's put 8 speakers together who that they're going to challenge each other, that each one of them was going to want to do really well, and that when people see the list of names, hopefully they're like, man, I want to go to that. Like our hope was that our pastors and our youth workers would be like, man, that's pretty cool. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So the hope was that they'd be excited about the speakers as well.
Cool.
But as far as if you're like, because we live in this season of COVID, we have not lined up any of our entertainment. Last convention, I think we had David Crowder. The one before that, we had for King and Country, which both of those, I don't know if we can do that level each convention. If people, that stuff is so hard. That the work that goes into that is, I mean, just bringing in one of those bands is pretty much almost the equivalent of planning a full day for youth convention. So it adds so much to the camp, but it's also a ton of work, and it's just getting harder and harder with the demands that these groups have. So we haven't booked anybody yet, looking forward to doing that here in the next couple of months. I'm hoping, come February, March, we can start to look at our entertainment lineup.
Yeah, all that sounds really great. And for our listeners, if you'd like to learn more about, who the speakers are, when it is, other things that might come up, all that information can be found on elevateyc.org. So if you want more info, you can just hop on to the internet and check that out. And they'll have the most up-to-date things in order to get you involved, or to get the ball rolling, to see what the price is and what age group are invited. All that stuff can be answered on that website. So once again, that's elevateyc.org.
Brandon, can you tell us a story of something transformational happening at the convention? One of the main things is we want to see how lives are changed through this. Can you tell us a story about that?
Yeah, we see it at every convention. You have, one of the things I'll say is I've been wowed at every youth convention by the preaching of God's word. One of the things that we always strive for is our speakers who preach from a law gospel perspective. That when you come as a student, you are going to hear God's law preached. You're going to hear how great it is, how great God's law is, that it convicts us and reveals to us our sin. And then once you're aware of your sin, you have the gospel given to you. You get not just that Jesus dies for you, not just that Jesus takes away your sin, but that he gifts you his righteousness and that he makes whole the relationship that we have with God the Father, so that we can have a whole relationship with God the Father. So, I have watched kids who have grown up in the church. I mean, from my youth groups to other ones, you are watching them talk about their sin regularly. Because one of the things that we learned early on was this. And I, as good as our speakers have been, I have loved them. They have wowed me. They have been phenomenal. One of the things that we do is we schedule quite a bit of time for you to still have with your youth group, because this is not like, you don't just come into Elevate and we provide every service for you. This is a ministry that's a tag team ministry. We are working this together. So we realize that we provide really good worship music. We provide great MCs. Like, those are things that we do well. We provide good speakers who proclaim the law and the gospel. But then where it really happens, where you really get to see stuff, is we always provide time for each group to have their own time together. So we do a small time in the afternoon, and then we do a little bit more time in the evening. And here's what happens. This is, man, I wish more people could see this, because you take these kids from the city, or you take these kids, even if they're from, the Midwest, and you put them up in the mountains, and it's dark, and you're not surrounded by city lights, and you can see all the stars, and you're sitting on rocks, or you're sitting on the side of a hill or picnic tables, and you're with your group, and that's one of my favorite things to do. I walk around in the evening, because I don't ever have a group there. And I listen to the questions that we give them to ask their youth group kids. So the speaker will say, hey, here's 4 follow-up questions. You might not need them, and a lot of people don't need them, but here's 4 follow-up questions to ask your kids to get them to start talking about the message. And if you want to talk about watching kids, it's like watching their faith come to fruition. It is like watching a light bulb go on. It's like watching a flower open up and blossom. It is, and you see it all the time. I mean, I know last time Troy Tisdall was speaking, and I believe he was walking down to the stage. I don't even know if he spoke yet. We should probably ask him, and he sees a kid in the hallway. Wasn't with his group, and the kid is sitting on the steps, and the kid is weeping because their sin came alive to them that week. And we're going into one of the sessions, and you can tell that the kid is like, oh my goodness, like, how do I say this? The kid is anticipating another message where they're going to hear about our sinfulness, but God's goodness. And Troy's having this conversation with this kid before he even gets up there. I can tell you another one too. I mean, part of the 3C part, one of them was challenge. And one of our youth conventions, we wanted to challenge students to live in a world that is driven by forgiveness. So as a committee, we thought there's so many people who don't understand forgiveness. We don't live in a world of forgiveness. We live in a world of justice, righteousness, and this is false justice, or, not a real righteousness, but where we think that we need to earn stuff and do things, and we can accomplish things by being the better person, even though we're really not, and we thought we need to teach our youth that they can change the world by forgiving other people the same way that Christ has forgiven them. Because we're each going to go through different things in life where we come across hurts. I grew up being, in my mind, hurt by my parents, hurt by the decisions my parents made. I know that Christ is calling me to forgive them. So we had this one message at one of the camps, and Dave Foss was preaching on the call to forgive. And there's a picture of it out there. We don't really do altar calls. We talk to kids about their sin. We want them to have a response to the gospel. But Dave asks students, to come forward. If you want prayer for forgiving other people, and if you see this picture, it's these students, everyone's coming down there with a sense of, I know that there are people out there that I need to forgive, That's what we do at youth convention. So when you ask for like a moment, man, when your kids in your youth group realize they need to go home and they need to forgive their moms, their dads, their siblings, the people who've hurt them in life, some of those kids had been hurt probably sexually, physically, emotionally by people who should never hurt them. And you see them responding to the message of, I have to forgive people. I get to forgive people. Those are the moments when you're at camp and you're like powerful. Like you just sit there and you get a cheesy grin on your face because you're so happy. You're so thrilled with the work of the Holy Spirit that you couldn't smack the smile off my face. Those are the moments, man. Those are the moments.
Yeah, that's tremendous to hear about, how immersive the event at Elevate is. Brandon, do you have any suggestions to leaders who might be hearing this and saying, oh, this sounds amazing for our group of kids, but you know what? It's really far away, or like we're a smaller church. We might not have the money in order to send those kids. Do you have any suggestions to maybe overcome those type of obstacles that people might be facing right now?
Yep, for sure. Listen, I think it was in 2003, I was doing youth work in Huntington Station, and man, maybe it was 2001. I don't remember, but we had a convention. Ryan, you were there. The convention in Florida that didn't have the AC.
Yeah.
Remember that one?
Yeah.
It was a little warm there. We're in Florida, beginning of August. Maybe it was the end of July. Yeah. There's no air conditioning. It's hot. It's hot, right?
Yeah.
I remember taking, I think there's like 2 or 3 students from Huntington Station. And it must have been 2003. It was 2003. And it was not on our docket to go. It wasn't something we were planning on. But Manly also was like, man, it might be good for us to be a part of the synod, to get our kids around other students in our synod so they can see that they're just not on their own. And I was like, yeah, I guess that makes sense, like, so we threw something together and we fundraised. And here's one of the things I learned. There is a desire, and so far, every LB church that I've been a part of, every single one I've been a part of, there has been a desire from the more mature or older part of the congregation to see them be a part of the Church of the Lutheran Brethren. So when you come to youth convention, you're not just coming to hear about the gospel, which you're hearing about the gospel, okay? I know that. But it's for you to see the rest of your family. It's a family reunion. Mm-hmm. It is a place where you get to have other people speak to you. So when we talk about like getting people to come, or like, man, how do I fundraise this? You know what? There's never been a shortage of money. I know one time we offered a church, no joke. They did not take us up on it. They did not come to youth convention. I won't say what church it was, but I called up a church and said, hey, I'll gift you. I will gift you 15 tickets. And they're like, oh, we don't even have 15 kids in our youth group. Well, then we'll gift you 5. We'll gift you 10. We want you to come. We want you to experience what we have going on. We know it's that good. Now, I don't know if we still have the funds to always do that. And to be honest, we haven't given out any free tickets because no one's taken us up on it. But we have done stuff where like, hey, man, I don't know if our church can afford it. Where we've done, tell you what, we'll give you 1 free ticket. So if you can get 1 kid to pay and you will give you 1 and you come, just come and see what we have going on. Mm-hmm. And here's what I've learned. There's always the more mature, the older part of the congregation of our churches who want to see people connect. It's hard for me to believe that if you stood in front and said, hey, we have 2 kids who want to go to youth convention and we want to pay for half of them to go, that someone in your church isn't going to stand up and be like, hey, I'll pay for that. We had this one time when I was at Bethesda in Eau Claire, and we didn't have any open tickets. And then like we booked out. I mean, we had every seat was full in the bus, there's no more room. And then we had a kid bounce out. They're like, how are we gonna get rid of this ticket? Camp's in 2 days. And I'm like, oh, I'm sure if I put it out there. So I sent out a text message saying, hey, we have 1 free ticket, next thing I know, we had like 7 kids who wanted that 1 ticket. So then I had to send out another text message saying, hey, I offered out 1 free ticket. I have I don't know if it was 5 or 7, but it was a number. We had to then go and find more space and we found people to gift the 5 tickets or whatever it was. Mm-hmm. We had to get more vehicle. I forget how that happened. I don't want to exaggerate, but that's how it happened. Like, this is the week before camp. And I just believe there's always some funds. There's always funds. So if you need help with fundraising, I'll gladly help you. We'll connect you with some of the people that we've had who have done a phenomenal job. And I'll give a shout out to a couple of people. Mark Johansen, he does everything. Okay. He does everything. He goes to our local camps. He goes to youth convention. He does youth specialties. This guy does a bunch of these things with his students, and he's never had a shortage of money. You don't hear him saying, you know what it is? It's Mark is a very effective planner. Youth conventions every 2 years. If people have a lack of funds, they came to us at one time and asked us if we would do youth convention every summer. And we said no. I said, nope, not doing it. And it was the quickest conversation. And then we were supposed to have dinner and have this conversation for about an hour. And they said, can we do youth convention every year? And I said, no. No. Well, you didn't even think about it. No, I don't need to think about it. I know we have Tuscarora. I know we have Inspiration Point. I know we have Warm Beach. I know we have Winter Weekends. I know we have other ministries. And we team up with them. So part of doing youth convention every other year is giving people an opportunity to be saving for a year and a half, 2 years before they ever even come. So the other person I'd give a shout out to, and this person isn't doing youth work anymore with us, but you could always contact her and talk to her, is Reina Kavanagh, who just got married. I think it's Reina Caputa now. But she was from the furthest church away. She was on Long Island. She would raise money for 30 kids to come, or 30 people every single time. And she was at Bohemia, which I don't know how they're doing now, but at the time, their youth group was probably bigger than their Sunday morning church. You're talking about bringing 30 people. And I've preached at that church. I've seen the 10, 15 people that gather there on the Sunday morning. She brings 30 people, and it was so creative in how she fundraised. They sold pumpkins. They did car washes. This group flew in, and then they rented a party bus for the time they're there. And then they would stay 4 extra days and go to baseball games and water parks. And I was like, where do you get all this money from? And she's like, we fundraise. I'm like, well, I guess. But I'm just saying it's possible. And we have resources that can help you find that money. So.
All right. Thanks. Brandon, I know COVID's on our minds with Elevate coming up this coming summer. There's still a lot that's unknown about how the pandemic's going to play out and how long it's going to last. How's COVID impacting your planning process?
That's probably the toughest part right now about planning YC. I just said YC myself. About planning Elevate. And we try to stay in regular contact with the YMCA of the Rockies. They are, and this is not me making this up, when you go into the YMCA of the Rockies and you're checking in, or at least when I check in from the very first time and I'm going up there to get settled in, they have plaques on the back of their wall where Christian magazines and organizations and camp groups list Estes Park YMCA of the Rockies as the #1 family camp in America. Why do I say that? I tell you that because they go through this all year long. We go there for 4 to 5 days, once every 2 years. And we are just going to lean heavily upon them for what we do. So like when we go there, how will it look? You know what? I'm sure it's going to look different, because last year at convention, we put different groups in the same rooms. What I mean by that, like, let's just say I had a church from South Dakota and they had 2 students, and I had a church from Washington and they had 6 students, and a room sleeps 8. We would put those 8 people in one room. Okay. Because it was cheaper for us. One of the things is we probably won't be able to do that this time, but however, we do have a number of things going for us. The auditorium, the atrium that we meet in, is 200 to 300 seats larger than our group. So we still have the ability to space out when we're in large session. Outside of our large session time, we do a lot of our activities outside. So, I mean, we do
tell us
organized.
about that. What are some of the other things that are going on besides those big meetings? Yeah.
So what we do, I mean, we're very similar to other camps too, but like we do a very large dodgeball tournament that is probably the hype of the hype. Okay. When you go there, and here's the cool part. We've put it into the contracts of the musician groups or the skit guy. I don't know if the skit guys actually did it, but I think they maybe did one a year. We put it in their contracts that if you're our entertainment and you're staying on campus, if like you're there that early, that you participate in the dodgeball tournament. So like, and you have and we have a trophy it's a large trophy. And I think at the top of it is a bowler, because that was the free trophy that we have. So, but every youth group wants this. So like we do a lot of stuff outside during the free time. We have a lot of organized games. We do organized music outside. There's the time you spend with your youth group, you're outside, So like yes, we're going to be inside, but we can spread out. We can do things like that when it comes with to COVID. And here's the other thing. I think you guys know this just as much. If you're pastoring a church right now, if you're head of any organization, the question Ryan just asked you changes every single week, right? I mean, so, and as a leader, I think COVID's taught us how to constantly be changing. I think I like change, and now I'm sitting here like, I don't like change. It's too much work. It gives me a headache. It is mentally exhausting. And then, so when I think about it for youth convention, I sit here and say, you know what? How much will still change? We're in December right now, and we're talking about the end of July. How can we even begin to plan for COVID? We have no choice, and we will. But I'm just saying, even the things we plan for now will change in 3 to 4 weeks. And hopefully some of the stuff with the vaccination helps us and things like that. But we are thinking about it, planning it, talking with the YMCA of the Rockies that has thousands upon thousands upon thousands of students who come through and families who come through their camp at a given time. And we're going to lean on them and their expertise. But you know, Ryan, you did just ask another question. You said, what else goes on at Elevate Youth Convention? Can I also tell you guys a little bit about another part of Youth Convention that we're pretty proud of?
Let's do it.
We realize that because we do leader meetings every morning. I'm guessing every camp does that. You know, you meet with your leaders in the morning, and we didn't always get the best turnout. So then we started offering Starbucks coffee for all the leaders because we want them to come. So we go out and buy jugs and jugs of Starbucks coffee and treats, and they start to come, which makes you realize they really don't care about the things that you're going to tell them on the day. Yeah. They wanted the coffee, but so we start offering coffee, and I don't know how it just happened, but one morning we're looking out and we have 120 youth workers, volunteers, pastors, chaperones, parents who bring these kids. And it hit us. This is the time for us to train these men and women in ministry. We're already gathered. We already paid to come here. So it's not like you have to pay for an extra trip down to Florida for youth specialties, even though they offer great stuff. I'm just saying, we started to realize, man, we need to add something extra. So we started doing youth worker training sessions, and we pitched this to the synod, our synodical leadership. And we told them we want to do these, just like TED Talks. We're going to do 6 15-minute teaching segments. Each one comes with a book, or we want to give a book away for each of the sessions. So like when the person's there teaching on youth ministry, or how, I'll give you the best one. And we'll do this one at every youth convention. How do I teach law gospel? So every youth convention, your leader is getting a refresher course. And how do I teach the law gospel? And then they get a book that goes with it. And you might be like, well, why is that important? That's the most important thing we have. Yeah. That is like central to like getting kids to understand that you will constantly fail as you live your Christian life. You're constantly going to sin, but we want to remind you of the gospel daily. So we always give you, when we give you God's word, we give you all of it, the law and the gospel. Okay. Well, not every youth worker does that. When I was new, I wasn't doing that. You know, some church hired me because I was cool. I wasn't prepared. I didn't have 2 years of Bible school underneath my belt. I didn't have 3 years of master's levels classes from seminary, you know? So you start to do and you learn as you go. So at Elevate, we've been doing this, and we went to the synod and we asked them, would you gift us you were already asking the synod for money. And we went to them and we said, would you gift us $10,000 for training for youth ministry? And they're like, what do you mean? And we explained to them what we wanted to do and who was there. And they're like, absolutely, you know, we'll give you the 10 grand. So then what we did was we get these 6 people who teach these sessions. And this is during the free time. So we have other people doing stuff with your youth so that all of your chaperones can be there. Okay. And we do it. We smush it together in 15-minute segments. And this takes about an hour to do the 3 sessions on one of the days and an hour the next day. But we do these 6 sessions. We give them. So when they gave us the 10 grand, we started calling the places where we wanted these books. And they started to give them to us at cost.
Wow.
The first year we gave out, I think, 10 books. And then Hillcrest Lutheran Academy says, hey, we always promo at Elevate YC. Well, and we usually want to do something for you. And that's true. They do. They said, what can we do for you? And I said, well, I just told them what we were doing. And they said, we want to give every youth worker, every pastor, every parent a book also. So they gave them a book. Cool. I mean, and it's like, what's a book? Well, you know what? You just got to sit through 15 minutes of a seasoned youth worker and what they've learned in their journey. They paired it up with a book, and then we sent you out. We are training men and women, volunteers, part-time, full-time pastors. I mean, because Ryan and Mike, you both went to LBS. So did I, right?
Yeah.
Yes?
Yes, sir.
You guys are nodding. So that's a yes for the guess. Okay. How many youth ministry classes did you guys take at LBS?
0.
Okay. So we expect these volunteers to do stuff that we don't even always know how to do. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we thought, man, we have 120 of them in the same spot at the same time. Let's take advantage of that. And that was one of our changes for one of the years. And we keep doing it. But I'm proud of it because we're teaching people, how do I plan out my calendar? How do I do law gospel? What promises do I not make a kid? You know, when do I call social services? You know, any of those things that we just don't know, and we're teaching people. And I'm thrilled about it. I'm proud. I'm so happy for that.
That's great.
Oh, sorry, my thing froze, so I was waiting for to talk, and then I came back through, and no one was talking. That was very awkward. Yeah, those are some tremendous resources that you guys are giving out, and your ability to not only have them come as like youth workers to watch the kids and also to receive the law gospel, because whether they realize it or not, just sitting in on those sessions, they're hearing the same thing that the kids are hearing too. And so while they're the leaders, they're feeling that same type of conviction, that same type of forgiveness. And so for you guys to step it up and give them more resources and encouragement and equipping them in order to do this is a tremendous opportunity. And that should really be something that is highlighted a lot. And so thank you, Brandon, for bringing that up. And I hope that if we have listeners who know about Elevate or who are maybe on the fence for it, realize that this is not only for your kids in your youth group or the kids in your community, but also you're going to come and not only be fed by hearing God's word, but also you're going to be given tools in order to be equipped to better serve your community and further the gospel in those kids' lives. And I think that that's tremendous that you guys saw that, reacted to it, and are now doing stuff in order to bring light to those opportunities. And so that's great. So my last question for you, Brandon, is do you have any advice to groups that are thinking about going to Elevate for the first time, and things that they can do in order to get ready for something like this?
My advice is you should do it. No. You know, I do, you know, the same thing over and over again. isn't helpful for anybody, you know? And what I mean by that is every Sunday and this is good. This is a good part. We walk into the same church. We have a regular routine. We go to the same schools. At least I do this. I eat at the same restaurants. And mostly the reason why I eat at the same restaurants is it's out of fear. Once I find something I like, I stick to it. I don't want to make the mistake of blowing money or resources trying something new. So why am I saying that? I'm saying that because I hope that there's people who are listening to the podcast today and they can sit back and be like, man, I'm risking a lot of resources on something I've never been a part of. So I would just like to encourage you to talk to somebody who's been, go with another group. Like if you're worried about all the resources, share them, team up with another youth group. Find a few churches from around your area who might be going and go with them. Or you might be like, well, I don't even know of another youth group who's going from around me. Go talk to some of our speakers. You both are on the East Coast. We've had Roger Vixness speak. We've had a couple of different guys from the East Coast out there. Go talk, Chris Priestaff. Go talk to them and ask them what they saw. Is it something that will be beneficial for my kids? Because when someone says to me too, Mike, man, it's a lot of work. It's fundraising, it's travel, it's a lot of work, and that means it needs to be worth it. And we understand that. Like, we want it to be more than worth it when you come. So my advice for you is come talk to me. Go find someone who's been there. Find someone who has spoken there. Find a youth group to go with. There's ways of making this trip easier. And the other part of it is just to know that we want you to come. Like when I hear of a new church that's coming, and I was just talking to an East Coast church the other day, and when somebody trusts you with their kids, their students, like, hey, we're gonna come. Like, man, you're trusting us to come. Like, that's a responsibility that we want to handle or take and take it seriously. Like, man, I'm glad you're coming. We're not going to wreck your resources. When you leave here, you're going to say, man, our goal is when you leave that your kids' lives are changed forever. That's true. Like, that they will always be able to remember that time in Estes Park, Colorado, when the word of God sliced and diced and healed, and then for you as a youth leader say, man, that was worth it. I'm glad we did that. So, yeah.
Thanks, Brandon. Sweet. I'm looking forward to seeing you at Elevate. It'll be great to be there. Thank you, Brandon, for being our guest. You can, listeners, you can find out more about Elevate at elevateyc.org. Thanks all for listening to our show today. Don't forget to subscribe to the show, and we'd love it if you share the podcast with a friend or a colleague. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. And we'll see you guys next time.
This has been an episode of the CLB Forge podcast with Pastor Mike Natal and Dr. Ryan Nilsson. Thanks for listening. We welcome your questions and comments. Email us at podcast@clbforge.org.